All right. I guess I have to start. So two of the things that I hate the most are pictures of myself. Yeah, other than Wendy, of course. Pictures of myself and hearing my voice recorded. So this is like a bad trip to the dentist. And I've known it's been coming for weeks, and you can't do anything about it. You just have to deal with it. So this is going to be a little unorthodox, to say the least. But I think it's worth saying, and that's why I'm doing this. So let's pray, and then we'll jump in. God, I just thank you just for your love, for your compassion and mercy and grace, for your desire to meet with us, for your desire to change us into your image. And I ask that you would be with us here, and those that couldn't make it, I ask that you would be with them as well. In Jesus' name, amen. So the last few years have been some of the most rewarding times in my life, and some of the most difficult. I've seen both of my girls graduate from college. I've seen Wendy start college, Kevin get into college, get a vision for his life, get engaged, scare me to death. I mean, did I say that out loud? And I've had just some really other tough things going on during this time. And I'm not one that... I typically share more up here than I do out there, which is kind of weird in some ways. But I'm not one that shares a lot of my problems. I don't share on Facebook. I don't share typically with many people. But over the last few years, there's been quite a few times when I've been going through really difficult times that people have picked me up. I didn't think she was going to be here, but almost 2 years ago, I was going through probably one of the worst times that I could ever remember. And Becky Bourne sent me a text saying, "Peace to you, my friend." I saved that text until my phone died just recently. For almost 2 years. And I looked at it multiple times because it picked me up when I needed it. And hopefully we do that for each other. And so a couple years back, and I was looking at dates, and it was almost 2.5 years ago that we did the Power of the Habit book. And that was really, really impactful for me because it forced me to look at some things, which sometimes we don't like to look at certain things about ourselves. And it forced me to look at some things, and I think those of us that heard the studies and things like that, it was some challenging stuff for some of us, probably more so than others. For me, it definitely was. But here's a couple of things that I took from it, and kind of this will be kind of a launching pad to some degree, is that we sometimes set ourselves up for failure by setting goals, setting priorities that are unrealistic. You know, I remember back in the day how many times I said I would pray for this long, and I'd read this much each day, or I would do this, or I'd set goals that there was no way that I could achieve. And then I would feel defeated and quit. And that was something that was common, I think, for many people. The other thing is that, or another thing, is that we can't change everything at once. There's usually multiple things in our lives that need to be adjusted as we go. And then there was probably one of the most important things for me was the idea of this, I can't remember if they call it a cornerstone or a keystone habit. Almost like a linchpin type thing that if you can get that thing in line, other things will line up naturally. And learning about that and thinking about that really was really helpful for me. And a couple other brief things, that we tend to revert to our old habits during times of stress, during times of difficulty. And I know how often I do that, how often when things are difficult, you go back to what's comfortable. You go back to where, for whatever reason. And then the other thing that really stood out was this idea that belief or hope is what the experts found to be the critical ingredient for creating a permanent change. Is having that belief and hope. And I'll deal with that a little bit later. But that community played such a big part of that. And so hopefully you'll see where I'm going as we go. But those are things that I wanted to kind of give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So about a year ago, we had a meeting, and we were talking about studies and things like that. And we came up with a lot of different topics, like the shame and vulnerability one that we did the last couple of weeks. We've got a couple of other ones coming up for that Katie and Wendy are going to do on the LGBT community and things like that. We've had different things. One of the things that we mentioned briefly, and I think I may have even been the one that mentioned it, is the idea of really dealing with issues rather than just setting them aside. And I don't think we spent more than 2 or 3 minutes talking about it. I think someone brought it up. I think it was me. I think someone said, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and then we went on to something else. But I wrote it down, and I was looking through what I was going to do, and it tied in perfectly, I think, to what I really want to say. So the idea is dealing with issues as well as community, and how as a community we need each other to celebrate with each other and to cry with each other when things are difficult. And so a little over 2 years ago, I finally decided that it was time again to deal with my issue with my weight. Now, I've been struggling with it since I got out of high school. I actually played 2 sports in high school, was in pretty good shape. But as I got out of high school and my activity level went way, way down, my eating habits didn't change, and I got heavy quick. And I'd lose it a little bit, and I'd gain it back, and I've lost it a little bit before, and I've gained it back. And it's always been, in my adult life, a very difficult issue. And I'm not sure. I've been thinking about this in the light of the last couple of weeks with the shame and vulnerability. I'm not sure if it's that. I'm not sure if it was stress eating or comfort or avoiding other issues or what was going on when I am doing things. But I noticed there are certain things that I do with it. When I'm going through difficult times, food is a comfort sometimes. When I'm stressed, there's just various triggers, I think, that I have at times to do that. Now, today was day 680 of entering my food every day, 680 straight days on MyFitnessPal.
Jeez, that's amazing.
And today I'm just under 80 pounds, which feels really, really good.
You look a little over 80 pounds to me.
Yes, I am slightly, I weigh slightly more than 80 pounds, but I've lost almost 80 pounds. Yes, thank you.
That's amazing.
Very well done, very well done. And I don't want this to be, oh, look at how great I am, because it's not.
You are.
Well, goes without saying. I mean, I thought that was pretty much understood. But there's no way. Wendy has made so many sacrifices in terms of how she cooks, how she shops, how she does everything to make it as easy as possible for me. And I think without that, there's no way that would be able to happen with my kids and things like that. But there have been a couple of conversations. I started shortly after Brad Bowling started really seeing results. And that really gave me encouragement. And he and I had a couple of different conversations before I started, and how it works and what he did, and kind of explaining the nuts and bolts of what it works. And that was really, really powerful. After another meeting almost 2 years ago at Starbucks, Steve stopped me on my way out and basically said he would do anything I needed to help to like get me in a healthy place. I forget the exact word that he used, but it was something along those lines. And he's like, even if you only do 10 minutes a day of exercising or whatever. And for me, I realized even before I started that my cornerstone, keystone, linchpin thing was exercise. And so when I started walking at work, we had a treadmill at work. My boss gave me free rein to do it whenever I wanted to. During my work hours, she didn't care. She just gave me free rein to do whatever I wanted, whatever I needed. And that was because by the time I got home, to go on a treadmill after, it wasn't happening. But at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I'm kind of coming down the home stretch of my day, it worked. And so I did it probably anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. And it really made things easier for me. But I remember conversations with Brad, with Steve, with Scott, early on, that were really impactful. Kind of, you could do it, you just got to chip away, just little hints along the way that really made an impact on me and helped me along. Because there have been plenty of frustrations and failures and difficulties, and plenty of successes and victories and things like that. And then as I've started to see results, I've been blown away by people here, Karen and Becky and Bonnie and Mark. Everybody has, when saying how good I look and how they notice and all these things. And it's like, there's been times where you guys have said those on days that I was getting really close to just saying, what am I doing? It's like, I'm not going anywhere. Because the last 6 months, I think I've lost maybe 10 pounds. And it's really, really a slow rate compared to before that. And it was getting really, really frustrating just on that level. And it's like, but a little word of encouragement here or there helped me to continue going on that when I needed it the most, when you guys had no idea where I was. And there's been plenty of issues with this. And Wendy and I were talking, and with friends, with our kids especially, when they're going through difficult times, I mean, yeah, we can jump on them and get on them, but when they're struggling with self-esteem and feeling like a failure and such, we do what we can to build them up with our friends and things like that. That's I think most of us are all that way, because we don't want to squish someone when they're down. We want to kind of help them to see their capabilities, their worth, their value, And that is something that is really, really powerful, and something that we lose track of and don't see sometimes. Because I know, especially during football season, I'd much rather be at home than here on Sunday mornings, if I'm quite honest. I get 1 day a week to sleep in, Saturday, and if something is going on Saturday, I do not get to sleep in at all during the week. And that really sucks sometimes, quite frankly, because I sleep lousy sometimes. And that 1 day to catch up, if I don't have at least a day to get a little bit of extra, I'm thrashed the next week. And but so often when I come, something happens, either the message, the worship, one of the people, and not every single time, if I'm honest, but there's just a little pick-me-up. There's just a little pick-me-up to kind of keep me going down the path. Okay. Unexpected consequences. So, as I'm dealing with this weight issue, especially early on, there were some unexpected consequences. My anxiety level, my stress level, was off the charts. And which, in retrospect, makes me believe that maybe part of what was going on with my eating problem had to do with stress, relieving stress. My stress got so bad, my anxiety got so bad that I went in for help. And I've gotten help, and I've recognized what is causing things. I have OCD, and it's not the regular, or more common OCD. I check things. I oversee things. Which has always been part of my nature. One of the things that I remember when I was 20 years old, way back at Cyprus, I had keys, I was locking up. I'm a 20-year-old kid with keys locking up a, 14,000 square foot, 20,000 square foot building. I would have to go through each room, and I found a system to go through to do it, to make sure I checked everything and did everything, and it would take me a little bit of time. It's a prudent thing to have in some ways, but that now, looking all the way back then, I see aspects of it back then, but it got more out of control more recently, and I was almost paralyzed by the anxiety and the stress. And I remember coming a couple of different times, and again, I think it was Becky, that just, it's like, I'm having a, how are you doing? I'm having a really hard time. Didn't go into any specifics, just having a really hard time. And a little bit of word encouragement helped, going, talking to someone about it, kind of working through some things. It's getting much better and things like that. But there were the really difficult thing about dealing with issues is sometimes one unravels into another and into another. And all of a sudden, it can be scary as heck, and has been at times. And there's been great times of triumph and happiness and excitement, and times of frustration and hopelessness and difficulty. And so hopefulness and hope have been something in the last couple of months that couple of years really, through this journey as well, that have been a big part of going through this. And I've had plenty of times where I felt hopeless, felt like I was in such a rut that I was just going to work, coming home, and trying to completely turn my brain off. Go on Netflix, do whatever I need to do, turn my brain off for a little while, get to bed, get ready for the next day. And I was just trying to survive. And, it was some tough times, some really challenging times. And what I've sort of tried to do, and I wish I can do better, is how do we utilize the victories that we have to help us in our current struggles. And if you've got the solution to that, please let me know, because I mean, you can be a best-selling author at that point pretty easily without really being a good writer, because everybody would be thirsty for that. But we've got to remember that, yeah, I did okay in this, and I have, Kennison has brought up many times the idea of gratitude and being thankful for what we have and really recognizing what we have. And that has been really, really helpful for me to realize, wait a second, I feel hopeless, but look at everything I have. I mean, it's like, how, it doesn't correspond, but it's not necessarily changing the feelings that I have and the thoughts that I'm having and things like that, but it's a process to work through. And that part is better now, but things are still challenging. But how do we as a community pick each other up? How do we as a community encourage each other in a way that is meaningful? And I think we do in some ways. I don't think we always share that, because obviously I haven't shared things that have happened multiple years ago that have been an encouragement to me. And I think it's important for us to give each other feedback on that from time to time, because we forget the impact that we can have on others. It's way easy to forget that. And the fact is, we need each other. We need each other during the tough times. We need each other during the good times. And one of the things that we need to do is to be able to recognize it. See, I think most of us here have known each other for a fair amount of time. I think we could see when someone's off. I think most of you, I can kind of tell if something's off. And sometimes I'll press and sometimes I won't. But I want to be attuned to what I see so that I can recognize when someone may be having a difficult time. Especially if I'm in a decent place. Because if I'm in a bad place, it's a lot harder to recognize that in other people. But when we're in a pretty good place, we need to be on the lookout for that and recognize that and see what we can do, whether we can say something encouraging, whether we can offer assistance, whether we can do little things to help each other along the way. Because we're small, and that's really, really great in a lot of ways. But that also means that we all count. I mean, we all need each other in a way. And so if we can recognize it and try and do that, see what that word of encouragement would be, what that offer for help would be. But if we don't recognize it, there's no way we're gonna, it's just dumb luck at that point. You know what I mean? Whether we're saying something encouraging or not. Unless we're Becky and we always say encouraging things. It's just kind of who you are, but not all of us are her, I guess. But So one thing, Chris is much better at this, asking questions and then not answering them. I like to try and answer the questions, but this time I'm going to ask a question and I don't know the answer. What does it mean to be healthy? I've thought a lot about that in the last couple of years, dealing with my weight, dealing with mental health, dealing with all these things. And that answer is changing as time goes by. But what does it mean? What is it going to take for me to be healthy? What does it mean for me to be healthy? And ask yourself that. And nobody knows the answer but you know. So my big idea is to take from this, hopefully, is that community matters. It can and has made a difference. And it can continue. And really dealing with issues is messy and tough. But it's worth trying to do. But it is messy and it is tough. Let's pray. God, I just thank you for your love, for this group. Just that you care, that they care. And ask that you would be with us this week. You would help us to recognize you, recognize the people around us, and grow into the people you want us to be. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.